Hello everybody, good evening, good night, good morning if that's the time you're watching the show, I guess. But anyways, welcome to a Ludocast Minicast interview. This is the first show of its kind, and it's here live on the Ludocast website. Well, not live, I guess. We recorded this a little while ago. But anyways, you're watching it now, so welcome to the show. I am joined today by Brent Black. But,
hi,
Brent, that's not the name most people most likely know you as.
True.
You want to give it away? You want to tell the people what your name on the internet might be?
On the internet, I am known as Brentalfloss.
Brentalfloss. So, if you know the name, you've heard his music. Now, if you don't know the name, you now know that he makes music. So, Brent, I'm going to give a little bit of history. Brent, I've got a little profile on you.
Oh boy.
Born in Irving, Texas.
True.
In the year 19XX.
That's exactly right. Yes. Well done. Well done.
Irving, that's as much as I'm going to say. But anyways, my history with Brentalfloss is back into about 2007. About the time that the Wikipedia article that I read about you says you emerged is about the time that I heard your Mega Man with Lyrics song. And I saw it on the internet. And I was listening to other funny internet video game things. At the time, I was listening to the Proto Men. And I was listening to Dwayne and Brando. And I was listening to basically anything I could get my hands on that was clever and video game related. And my friend said, hey, you got to listen to this. And I ended up listening to a few of your pieces. And I was like, this guy, he's clever. This guy's pretty fucking clever. I got to give it to him. So,
thanks, man.
Yeah, man, it was a good time in my life, and I very much enjoyed your music during that time. But then time went on. I would listen to more music. Like you were just kind of in the sort of ether with the rest of my knowledge of that music at the time it was in my life. And then I had an opportunity all of a sudden to attend a concert recently that was being hosted by my friend James, who runs a game store called Game Underground. Now, this concert was at a game tournament that he had, and he was like, oh, yeah, a few people are going to be there. Mega Ran, Keith Apicary. Oh, wait, Keith Apicary, like Keith Apicary? Oh, yeah, and Brentalfloss. Wait, like Brentalfloss, like the Mega Man with, like, and the Mario, and, like, that, yeah? And you're running the show? Maybe I should actually get off my duff and go see this show. So I did, and it was all worth it. The show was great. And it was the first time I got a chance to see you live. I think everyone was super hype for the show. And, everyone there knew the body of work that you were bringing to it. And I got a chance to bring it here on the Ludocast. So that's full circle now. That's my history with Brentalfloss. So, Brent, thank you, first of all, for coming on to the show.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's really, really great to start the interview show with somebody that I've actually had a history with their body of work, so I can at least look back and speak to it a little bit. And when I was at the show, I picked up one of your CDs with some songs on it that I hadn't heard. And folks, if you haven't heard his Space Oddity spoof with Star Fox, Space Oddity, I'm saying that's your best one.
Thanks, man.
Flat out. Like I maybe have listened to that album a couple of times now because I don't have many other albums in my car, and when I'm going through tunnels, it's great to hit the CD button from time to time. But I gotta say, man, I'm a David Bowie fan till death, and to hear you go through that and just kill it was magnificent. So, thanks, folks, go Google that one. But if this wouldn't be an interview if I didn't hit you with some questions.
True.
And I didn't give you a chance to run your yap because I'm really good at running mine.
Oh, I'm so good at running mine, but the fact that I could just sit here and listen has been great so far. But we'll
all right.
We'll get on with the interview.
We can always have future conversations. This is always a possibility. So let's get fundamental. We've got people. I'm going to admit the Ludocast is a young show. I'm looking to grow it, and so I want to start at the beginning because that'll give people an idea where the Ludocast is coming from. I like to build things from the ground up. Where did you start with the moment we're going to start with the Brentalfloss idea. The Mega Man 3 with Lyrics is sort of touted as like one of your big first hits. But what was the moment you were sitting there thinking like, this needs words?
Yeah, well, okay, so I started making videos on YouTube around 2006 or 7, but then I graduated from grad school in 2008 in the early summer, which is when people graduate.
Yeah.
So here I was with a master's essentially in lyrics. It was in musical theater songwriting, but emphasis on lyrics, and it's like a Hogwarts program anyway. It's like, you know, like it's
With houses and the Sorting Hat and everything.
yeah. It's a strange kind of degree, right? So I was invited to teach this summer course, and I created a curriculum called Let's Make a Musical. So I'm out in Ardmore, Oklahoma, summer of 2008, for 10 straight weeks, directing a production of High School Musical, the stage show, Disney's Aladdin Jr., and like also doing my Let's Make a Musical camp. And I'm like immersed in music, lyrics, storytelling, all this stuff that I've just gone to school for, that kind of thing. And I have always loved the Mega Man 3 title theme. In fact, I think there's at least one or two instances of it on my channel before I ever added lyrics, because I just loved it so much. But I mean, I'd love to say that it was some like lightning struck and I, you know, like had a near-death experience, and you know, it was just, I wish I could remember the exact moment, but it was kind of one of those, like, the second I thought of it, it was like, oh, that might be fun. And the original draft didn't make much sense. It had stuff like, I am not a Yankees fan, and I, instead of like, also known as rock, like just stuff that rhymed, just because I was like, there was no template. There was no template yet. It was just like a draft. And I was like, well, why don't I make more jokes about the game? And anyway, but it just kind of, you know, I had just gotten a new laptop that had good video editing software on it, and it all kind of came together very, very fast. I think once the draft that I liked was done on paper, I think I put the whole video together in like a feverish 2 or 3 hours, which if you go back and look at it now is not surprising. It's a feat of 360p Photoshop and a couple of titles and pictures from Google Images. But yeah, it was just, I think the fact that I was so immersed in teaching kids how to write lyrics, teaching kids how to do storytelling through music, how to work with songs that already existed, and it just came to me because I had loved that tune and generally loved video game music growing up. And I think that the moment of Eureka wasn't then. I think it was when I realized that people liked that on the internet more than anything else I had done, and that because of that, that's what I should explore. And eventually it became literally a career. How, I don't know, but it, you know.
So what was the etymology of Brentalfloss? What's that from?
I wish it were more interesting. It was 2004, 5, sometime around then in college, and my AOL screen name at the time, I was still on AOL in 2004.
I've had AOL screen names too. We can all just get it out there and admit it. We've all dabbled and experimented with America Online.
At least 1 in 3 children. So my screen name was Brent Black, which is kind of funny because but it really was not smart as a way to try to get people to contact you, because apparently I knew a lot of dyslexic people or something, because they would just email Brent Black thinking I had somehow switched it, and I'd never get their emails. I was like, I need something new. And I thought about like Brentral Park or Brenter of Attention, Brentertainment, and Brentalfloss just, for whatever reason, on that day, made sense, and it stuck. And so when I joined YouTube, well, and to be fair, a few friends of mine started calling me that from the screen name as a nickname, and then that was my YouTube thing. And then I just, like, in one early video, just experimented with like calling myself that. But once videos of mine started doing well, it started to kind of stick.
Yeah.
And I kind of, you know, took it on almost like, what was good for me is that it makes it where anything I do as Brentalfloss is slightly exaggerated, slightly inflated, and not quite just the me walking around going to buy a sandwich. It's not quite the same. Like, Brent is scratching his ass and yawning. Brentalfloss is singing a song and doing stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely a persona.
Yeah,
you would say. Yeah. So there's Brentalfloss the performer, and then there's Brent Black the man.
Right.
Sort of on the other side of the coin. Do you think that's I'd say that's the case for quite a few YouTube personalities. Have you met anybody, a YouTuber per se, that has been such a stark difference from their online persona that it's just like shocked shocked you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think
You want to drop a name?
most fans of the Angry Video Game Nerd already know this, but now James is a genuinely nice, kind person,
Hmm.
but he is nothing like I would have expected because he's, you know, his videos, he's angry, he's loud, he's foul-mouthed,
Manic.
he's right, and in person, he's like getting him to really expound about himself or what he thinks or feels is like pulling teeth sometimes because he's just not a big talker.
Wow.
And you know, like if you have a couple drinks with him and loosen up, you know, you might have a conversation about movies or whatever. And this is not a value judgment. It's just the fact that you'd never think from the videos that he's a quiet, I think it's fair to say, kind of shy, you know, easygoing guy.
Interesting.
I think, well, JonTron is a little different in person. But then again, JonTron as a character in the videos, much like the Angry Video Game Nerd, is such a character,
He's
such a
larger than
broad. Yeah, I think if John in real life were his character, it would be really fun for 5 minutes. And then
Right.
you'd be like, fuck this guy. Like, I just wanted to talk and have a beer. Stop.
When is this video
Stop
going to
somehow.
end?
Yeah, stop somehow making yellow text fly at me when you say weird gibberish. Um,
Right, right.
but and there's a couple other examples. But I think everybody, you know, even the people that are pretty much themselves in a YouTube video,
Mhm.
it's like the difference between you when you first wake up in the morning and you on a first date. They're both
Yeah.
you,
Oh, yeah.
but one is curated. And I feel like everybody finds a way to kind of curate or find the side of themselves they want to present, the best foot forward version of themselves. And you never get to see all of it.
Right, right.
Because that's just not how it works. But I would say John and James are two pretty clear examples of people that are quite a bit different in person.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So let's
No
go.
problem.
Let's go back again to your teaching job a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
you were teaching. You were teaching the Let's Make a Musical course, and
Yes.
I want to talk about your what taught you. When did you start learning about music? So this is again just a little more your profile.
Right. So I started playing piano for no good reason at the age of 8. My sister had a toy piano. I just sat down and started plucking out notes, and it was like the best toy ever because there were no rules, and I could just, the more I did it, the more, it was like the best RPG ever. Instead of XP in a game making your level higher on that one game, when you get XP on the piano, you now know a song. You now know a trick, you know. It's more practical in real life. And so there was that. There was junior high band was my first formal training in music, although I still can't sight read chromatic music because I was a percussionist. So I learned drum set. I was a drummer. Nice. Yeah,
Sight reading, just whatever.
yeah. I can read tat, 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 tat. But once you start going up and down, it's like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, so that was some formal music education.
Mhm.
Then I started experimenting with actual songwriting, and there came a moment, I think it was my 14th birthday, where I had a Barnes and Noble gift certificate. Back when you actually had gift certificates, by the way, not
Paper.
just swipey cards. Yeah, exactly. Like a big traveler's check that gets you stuff. It was weird. It was a weird time. But I bought this book called Songwriting, A Complete Guide to the Craft by Stephen Citron, and it's like this Bible-thick book that I just mentally devoured. And it's like all about rhythm and music, all about lyrics and style, and that book changed my life.
Nice.
And so, you know, I kept writing. I would do background music for high school plays, and eventually I wrote a musical, or at least I wrote the music to a musical, which was put on my senior year
Nice.
in high school. So like there was a lot of practical learning, and I feel like some of the stuff I do, there's very few places to go for a formalized version of it. Like my grad school program is, if I'm not mistaken, the only higher education version of learning how to write musical theater storytelling or songwriting for the stage, where you go to a university and learn that. It's a very rare thing, honestly. So most of the learning you're going to do is practical.
Yeah.
I ended up continuing to write my own stuff through college, writing original songs, writing musicals, putting them on in my spare time. And so I think that's a pretty good assessment.
Nice.
I'm sure I'm forgetting something important,
No,
but as far as music and stuff, that's a pretty good timeline.
Well, I honestly had no idea that you were so involved with writing musicals. I've got a bit of a musical theater background myself.
Really?
I started with the piano, but I started just kind of because my mom said, "Oh, it's time for you to learn how to play the piano," and I was about 5 years old or something like that, and I played until I was about 10 years old. And so I had a decent foundation for the sound of music and all that, but I was really a percussionist at heart. And so from the time I got in third grade, and I went to third grade at a really weird, like, experiential learning kind of artsy hippie school. So we were all percussion, no sight reading. We learned by listening to the music and then just playing it. And so I would learn classical music by listening to it, and then on the marimba, playing it out. And so by the time I got to high school, I took the assessment test to get in, and I could play like a mother, but as soon as he put music in front of me, I couldn't read it at all. So they sent me to like extra lessons to learn how to read music and this and that. But musicals were a huge part of my existence for most of my life up until I went to college. And so to hear that you worked on musicals so much is actually so interesting to me, because I figured, oh yeah, you obviously trained on the piano, but musicals are a different breed. It takes a special kind of blend of storytelling and lyrics, especially lyrics, because musical lyrics can go in such wild directions, and when the music changes, the lyrics just follow it, and so music and lyrics blend together in musicals in a way that they typically don't anywhere else. Sometimes it can feel forced. In the best ones, it doesn't. So I've been in a few musicals. What would you say is one of your favorite of the big musicals?
Ooh, well, I love Little Shop. That was Little Shop of Horrors for those who aren't the cool kids.
Oh, Little Shop.
We call it by the short name.
Indeed.
I have a couple of guilty pleasure shows, like 1776 is an impossible show to put on, and it has some problematic elements, but I love it. I love it. The movie and the live version. Even though it's cliche, there is a reason that Phantom and Les Mis are popular, even if like they're not sophisticated in a certain kind of way. They're kind of broad. There's still a reason that a lot of people get into musical theater through those shows.
Yeah.
Or even if they're not into a lot of musicals, they still know those shows.
They're two great examples of sort of the timeless musical that manages to make a stage play feel like it's much larger than that. When you're in the audience, is an experience built for an audience in that space and in that way, in that delivery method. My favorite musical is probably still Jesus Christ Superstar.
Nice.
The original London cast with Murray Head as Judas, I think, is brilliant. I got a chance to be in the chorus of it during high school, and that show. I'm not necessarily the most religious man in the world, not even by a long shot. But you don't have to be religious to know that that's one of the greatest musicals ever written.
Sure.
And easily Lloyd Webber's probably his best work.
Probably. Speaking of Murray Head, I've recently gotten back into every different version of Chess, which
I noticed this.
Yes.
I've been stalking your feeds from time to time.
People watching at home, Chess is a very strange mix. So Tim Rice, who wrote with Andrew Lloyd Webber and also wrote The Lion King, for instance, the lyrics to The Lion King, teamed up with ABBA, the Take a Chance on Me, Mamma Mia people, or at least the writers from ABBA, and made a musical that started as a concept album. And they've never really nailed a way to make it a great stage production, or at least a great stage story. And I think that's actually a function of the fact that if you make a concept album before you've staged your show, now you've got people that like certain songs that you would have naturally cut if you had put the show on stage and gone, oh, this part goes on way too long. But once you've released the album, people love that track. You don't want to cut it. So now you're locked in. to certain songs that like will never actually advance the story. Anyway, Murray Head was on the concept album. That was the only reason I brought it up.
You know, it's true, and that's the only song. I think that's one of 2 songs from Chess that I have heard is "One Night in Bangkok," which is the hit single from that album easily.
Right.
You know, that's the one everybody's heard. And if you've heard "One Night in Bangkok" and didn't know, it's from a musical called Chess, which is surprise about chess, and it's actually a pretty interesting concept album. I vaguely remember the details. It's about a chess competition overseas and yada, yada, yada. And that's about all I remember.
It's basically a Cold War thing.
Okay.
It's East versus West. And it all kind of comes down to one game of chess, but chess being a metaphor for international politics because they're trying to get this one dude to do this thing. And if you throw the match, blah, blah, blah. Of course, there's lots of different versions of it because it's not a great stage production. So they've written at least 3 distinct versions of it since the early 80s. But anyway, yeah, it all is pretty much surrounding the Cold War, Russia versus America.
My favorite type of musical, though, and Chess and Les Mis and other stage shows are great, but I gotta give it up for the MGM movie musical.
Oh, yeah.
I was reared on those movies. My grandparents had a healthy VHS collection. And I would break out those plastic sarcophagus and just throw them in.
The sarcophagus, I know what you're talking about. Those big, puffy, white plastic things where you're like, you know,
right,
like
exactly.
Man.
I would get Gene Kelly, Frank Sinatra, and then I would watch some of the road movies with Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, Dorothy Lamour. So those were the kinds of musicals that I was used to watching for a long time before I even got anywhere near the stage musical as a thing. So even though they were somewhat like stage musicals, you know, Anchors Away has pieces that feel like stage musicals. Guys and Dolls is a stage musical. I just love the presentation of the movie musical. Have you seen a few of those?
Yeah. I actually I don't know if this counts, but I'm more familiar with Danny Kaye. Which I'm not sure that's MGM, but it's very much in the tradition of like, I mean, Danny Kaye musical movies tend to be a little bit more vehicles for him. It's almost like in the way that The Mask or Ace Ventura were Jim Carrey vehicles. It's like that, but a musical for a song and dance man.
I see what you mean.
I know that, you know, like a lot of the classic MGM, like White Christmas, Easter Parade, but like not intimately in like a grew up on them, like Wizard of Oz, you know, grew up with that. But
that's
for me,
a good one.
I would say if I have like a tradition of musical theater film, like musical movies that I would say is part of my creative DNA from a young age, definitely Disney Renaissance. Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King. Like, boom, that's the 4-pack.
That's a great set. Yeah, that's a really good set. Aladdin for me is my favorite out of those. I like to look earlier in Disney's set. I look at Robin Hood, Jungle Book. I look at Aristocats. I love that movie. I will stand by that movie until the day I die. I think the music and the story, just the characterization of that film is great. That's my Disney age, like right around that period in time, the Don Bluth era. Disney's history. So to kind of cap off this discussion about musicals, let's end with what is your least favorite musical?
Oh man,
or one that you just can't stand to see.
I mean,
can't stand to listen to music into. You just turn it off.
So living in New York for almost a decade, I have seen a lot of bad shows, but that's the thing, they're not really well known. I will say that I have a very love and hate relationship with Jekyll and Hyde, particularly the original concept album. Because in between the songs occasionally being compellingly catchy and like powerful, some of the lyrics are so frustratingly dumb. Like little things like "no, never, yes, forever," and you're like, "Oh, come on!" Or like, or when Jekyll is first turning into Hyde, and he's like, I might be paraphrasing, but it's pretty close to.
I'm not going to fact check you on this, trust me.
But he's like, this feeling, it devours and consumes me and drives me insane. And it's like, you got to be pretty keen mentally to know the exact moment that you are being driven insane
Sounds like a
and
radio
say it
play.
that way. Yeah,
You know.
like, and I mean, it's just some of the lyric. And the thing is that the lyricist for that did the Willy Wonka movie, and also worked with Anthony Newley on some things.
Oh,
He's
trivia.
not bad. It's just that I think sometimes when you take the guy who should be writing the Candyman song and try to get him to write like dark gothic, he's gonna come up with some dumb, silly shit. So anyway,
that makes sense. So that's a pretty good one. My least favorite was one of my childhood favorites, Starlight Express.
Oh yeah,
Used to love that show just because of the visualization of it, all the roller skates. And then about 3 years passed after I was like a huge fan of it, and I realized, God, I hate this show.
It's not great.
God,
I mean, there's some cute songs, but it's not JC Superstar.
No,
I'll say that.
No, absolutely not. And that's, of course, I'm talking on a Weber kick here. But I also remember distinctly hating Carousel, because I don't remember anything about it because I left halfway through it.
Carousel is one of those shows that it feels, I think, left over from an age where an operetta and the pace of a much slower show was acceptable. And the stuff that I mean, it was so fresh and new at the time to have characters that are clearly American, talking about American things and dealing with these specific, fairly modernish problems in song. But now when you go back and look at it, you're like, whoa, this is like the cheesiest thing I've ever seen. And it all takes forever to get around to the point.
Yeah, it's like...
So yeah, I'm with you on that. Carousel's a beating.
Yeah, sure. It was like getting through molasses, and about halfway through, I couldn't tell where anything was going, what anybody was doing, and I was just my whole family, I think, was with me. And we were like, should we go get some like hot dogs or something? That would be more entertaining. Eating a hot dog, no matter what's in it, would be more entertaining than watching this show. So that's a little digression down musical lane for you folks who aren't musical theater nerds. You've just been initiated a little bit.
They've got quite a reading list now of things to check out and hate or love.
A lot of great Google searches and a lot of people around you to annoy as you get into humming Jesus Christ Superstar. What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. I was able to convert most of my household, which is my girlfriend and my son. Well, he's 3, so he loves basically anything I put on that's upbeat. But getting them to love it was great stuff. So, pardon me while I clear my throat, and let's move on to a discussion a little bit more about game design.
Okay.
So, the reason I want to bring it towards game design is because, Brent, in the short time that you and I have had to hang out in person, the discussion sort of naturally went there. As we talked about video games sort of really, really quickly. Whenever I talk about games, I will inevitably start to get very academic about them, and I'll start to break them down into bits and pieces because that's just the way that my brain works. So I want to talk to you about just sort of a general game design principles discussion. We're going to talk, we're going to start up with what about, think about the features of your favorite game or the mechanics or anything concrete of your favorite games or the type of game that you think are at the top of your list. What do you think it really takes for you personally? So this doesn't have to be like best in general. That's something that we're going to get to later, is best versus favorite. But I want to talk a little bit, since we're still doing the interview, I still want to talk a little bit more about you. So what for you are some of the standout things that a game can do and offer you as in a player experience that you really, really appreciate?
Okay, I'm going to go lots of different genres here, because most of these things don't apply to everything, but
sure.
I love when a game puts you into a moment of storytelling in a way that a movie, a book, any other passive form of storytelling couldn't do. For instance, when you have to put a character out of their misery in an RPG and you really don't want to, but instead of the book where it's like, no, don't do it. Oh, no. Or the movie where you're like, oh, I have to watch the guy and he's forced to do it. It's like, you do it.
Push the button.
Yeah, and you cannot advance, much like this character has no other choice. But somehow when you live it, or I would say without spoiling it, stuff like the twist in BioShock, where they have manipulated, and again, I'm trying not to spoil, but they have found a way to manipulate everything you know thus far. And maybe I'm talking about the game, and maybe I'm just talking about all games, because BioShock takes advantage of you in a way. And when it finally turns out that you find out something you didn't know for most of the game, I'm trying to be very vague.
You're doing you're doing a good job, buddy.
It makes you have a reaction that is real within your own emotional, like, it's not just you as the character of the game. You have a reaction that is,
it's the kind of thing that makes you want to put the controller down.
Yeah, it's pure, it's emotionally inspired.
Take a step back.
Yeah, and you're living it in that moment, as opposed to reading about or watching other characters live it and seeing it through them. You're seeing it through your own, literally your own eyeball.
Now,
I also like, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I got an anecdote about this really, really quick. One specific moment in a game that you immediately reminded me of when you said put a character out of their misery. I'm going to spoil the end of a PS2 game called Gungrave. There's a cutscene, and at the end of the cutscene, the main character has his gun pointed at the dude who's caused the whole game so far. And nothing happens. The cutscene just keeps, like, the clouds keep going by. The dude's standing there, arms spread. Your gun's aimed at him. The game gives you no prompts whatsoever. None of the buttons on the controller work. And then when you push the shoot button, your character blows him away. And the cutscene just keeps going like nothing happened. That was one of the best moments in in-game storytelling I've ever experienced. It was subtle, it was quick, and it brought me into this moment where it's like, you have no other option. You have to shoot this guy. You have to do it. We will not do anything. And when it clicked for me that the game's not going to do this for me, it was like, all of a sudden, like, my terror level just shot through the roof. So I absolutely agree with you. That is perfect. Take me on to the next one.
So one that I think, could apply to a lot of different genres that the last one couldn't is, and this is very simple, so I'm going to try to say it in a way that's not totally boneheaded, but when a game allows you to do a thing better than it would naturally be done in real life. For instance, it's fun to be funny. It's fun to make jokes with your friends.
It's true.
It's a little harder to make jokes with strangers or mixed company. And then you have a game like Cards Against Humanity, or Fibbage, which is, if you guys out there don't know, it's a Jackbox party pack game. And suddenly these games facilitate being funny or clever with people, and you don't necessarily have to know them. It can be somewhat mixed. It can be mixed company. It can be a variety of senses of humor. But suddenly, a thing that it's fun to do but hard to, like if you said to your friends, "Hey, friends, we're hanging out. Let's tell some jokes and riff on some things and be funny." It's not going to happen. But suddenly, when you have a game that's designed to facilitate that, it's easier and, in a way, more pure than it is, or at least I think it's an enhanced version of that real life fun thing. And of course, most games try to, I guess, find something enjoyable and enhance it, or make it portable, or make it, like gamified or whatever.
Yeah.
But to me, it's when things that have to do with human interaction are suddenly facilitated by a game that, yes, you can get together and do, but suddenly it's enhanced and somehow more fun and easier because of the facilitation of whatever the game is, be it a board game, party game, console game, whatever.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because games are really just structures that we put around real life interactions in order to make them fair, basically, in order to figure out how we work together for achieving certain goals, blah blah blah. But within that aspect, the social game, creating an organic social, like an emergent social experience, I immediately think of games like Pictionary, or games like you said, Cards Against Humanity, or even just the classic charades, the game you don't need anything to play. Right. But even charades has a framework, and the framework is delicate enough that it doesn't collapse the sort of enjoyment of the game, the freedom of it for anyone to be able to walk in and play it. Do you think it's that kind of, like, it's that agelessness quality too that kind of really makes a social game important, or is it like mostly a grown-up thing, kids thing, or
I think I think that's an independent factor, because Cards Against Humanity is I think, way more fun than Apples to Apples, but that's because I am a fairly foul-mouthed 30-year-old.
It's very subjective, you know.
Yeah, whereas like how embarrassed would you be to be involved in a game of Cards Against Humanity with like a priest or, you know, a nun and then also some children and you're like, this is a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, how chill is the nun? I mean, that'd be the first question, right? I mean, if she's cool with it, I mean, maybe I can make some leeway for the kids if they're cool too. The priest, I mean, whatever, Father. Sorry, cover your ears. Well, I gotta have some. I gotta be able to stand up for myself with somebody. And I mean,
the idea of a nun being described as chill, I'm stuck on in a good way. I'm just sitting here going like, yeah, she's a pretty chill nun.
I've seen Sister Act. I know there can be chill nuns.
That's true,
right?
Well, and you know, nuns were all. Oh God, I almost said human beings. You know what I mean? Nuns were all people that weren't nuns before they were nuns. God,
so
human beings. I'm glad I didn't say that. Like, just roll it off the tongue. That would have been offensive to all the nuns watching your podcast, Joe.
Yes, to my nun friends, think not less of Brent. He tries so hard.
They already think none of me.
Nun dis. I like it. So that's I'm trying to think about the Jackbox. So when you mention a game like Fibbage to me is the standout here because it's the newest one in the pack, sort of. Even though the guys aren't necessarily new to doing it, the guys who made Fibbage, the team behind the Jackbox games, are the guys who made games like You Don't Know Jack, Jellyvision. It's a lot of veterans from that studio who have sort of kept this tradition going, a tradition they've had for a long, long time, of treating players like they're being talked to like human beings.
Right.
And in a medium like a video game, when you've got a digital host and you can't facilitate that kind of human interaction in a game like Cards Against Humanity, the host of the game is ostensibly the dealer of the cards, right? So the dealer, that's the person you're playing against because you're trying to play a card, you know, that's going to make them laugh. I'm not going to play a card for Erica that makes Brent laugh because I know that the two of you aren't going to laugh at the same things necessarily. Right. In a game like Jackbox, though, or in almost any of the Jellyvision games, it's 4 players against each other, similar to Cards Against Humanity. But the host of the game, the video game side of it, that has to feel like another person for it to really shine.
Right. That's a character in your group, kind of.
Right.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and so to me, that's one of my number one principles. I guess I'll throw that one on to the stack here, is when a video game can make an AI character, or when a video game can interact with me in a way that makes me feel like it's a natural interaction. Maybe not necessarily always talking to a human being, but a interaction that just flows well. And I think that pattern of interactivity that the Jackbox guys do, that's got to be the best in video games right now. Easily.
Cool.
Easily.
Yeah, they're very good at making you, if nothing else, you forget after a while that it's just a game, you know, and that it's not like, that it doesn't, because like they are good at making you feel like the game knows a little bit more than it actually could know.
Yes.
You know, the way that it responds and acknowledges your choices.
Oh, yes.
In a way that feels charming and personable, and it's like, with such a speed and such a seamlessness that nobody's fooled into thinking there's a little man behind the TV, but they do a very good job of making that feel seamless. And I've never seen those games be clunky in a way that, I mean, yes, if you play them long enough, you'll hear the same response, but you know, it's never so wildly off or wrong or clunky when they do it. And that's really, as opposed to like NBA Jam, where after you've played it for a couple hours, the announcers only say so many things, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. So what other, is there another sort of game design element or something from one of your favorite games? Let's look towards maybe more single player experiences. You do write a lot of lyrics for single player games. Mm-hmm. So you've definitely have a history with some single player games. So what is something from that, like the lone experience that you would take?
I would say that I appreciate when a video game can use music as a means of storytelling. For instance, when you watch the Star Wars films, there's a Luke theme there's a Leia theme, there's the dark side theme, and then sometimes they find little ways. John Williams finds little ways of incorporating themes to just remind you of what's going on, or to get you hyped, or to get you like ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum.
That's a good
but
one.
then there's a point later on after you hear that theme where it's like ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum. And you're like, what am I supposed to be feeling right now? I know that theme, but it's like and it's rare. Mostly I feel like Final Fantasy is a series that has occasionally pulled this kind of thing off. RPGs, games with big long soundtracks where the like for instance the ending credits of Final Fantasy VI. There's a lot of or Final Fantasy IV, a lot of reuse of themes that you've heard already, but now they're weaving together. They're musically telling a story that even if you aren't going, oh, that's that guy's theme, that's that guy's theme, it still enriches the experience in a way that even on a subconscious level, I think really raises the quality and shows that somebody put a lot of thought into it. That's a thing I really appreciate in games, when you can pull it off and when it's appropriate.
Definitely. The Final Fantasy reference makes me think of it. It's almost like the opposite of an overture in a opera. You know, at the beginning of an opera, you'll hear all of the major themes of the opera being played in small snippets, and then they'll start the show. But with Final Fantasy VI ending, and with things like Super Mario World's ending, you'll get these grand, massive, strung together themes from all different parts of the game that you just experienced, and they do a pretty good job of kind of breathing out, like, remember all of this, like, because you're sitting there at that point doing nothing, so it's like they have to spool back your memories, and that kind of music is a perfect example. And when you mentioned the theme, the ba-da-bop that comes back, my favorite game is Bayonetta, and
really,
yes, hands down, it is my favorite game. I don't think it's the best game, but it's my favorite game.
Okay. I've never played it, so I can't really say, but
okay.
Yeah, I feel bad now.
No. Don't. It's one of those things where I know that maybe not most people have played it, but if you like the action genre, and you like music, and you like just class style, dripping with style. Like if there's a big thing of pancakes, that's the video game, and you got a massive jug of style, and you just pour it all over the pancakes so you can only see style. That's what Bayonetta is like.
Gotcha.
It's so...
The pancakes are good too.
The pancakes are delicious, but oh man, I love me some style. Do you love style? I can't get enough of the style. Like that's what it's like.
Mix some style with some peanut butter. Now you got some chocolate chips. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
So it's a
good metaphor.
But there is a theme for Bayonetta, and it plays throughout the game in different forms and play at different places. The game doesn't have the best story per se. The plot's kind of nonsensical. It's this very sort of hyped up time travel-y Japanesey kind of thing. But the way that the music works in the game, and the way that the character moves to the music, she dances. Almost all of her moves are dance moves. So the music for her battles is always music you can dance to. And the music in between, when she's traversing, is a perfect cue, like, of the opposite. It's longer, strung out, beautiful. I gotta give it props. It's such a great soundtrack. So if you do get a chance to play Bayonetta, you gotta give it a shot. Do you have a Wii U?
I do.
Dude, you got Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 right now on the Wii U.
Okay, I'll check it out. I've promised myself I'm going to stop downloading from the eShop.
Okay.
Only because when I do and I don't like the game, I can't trade it.
Yeah, that sucks,
doesn't
it?
And while I'm the only person in North America that did not like the new Smash, I didn't like the new Smash.
Okay.
I could have gotten a pretty good trade-in 48 hours after buying it. I probably could have gotten a pretty decent trade-in rate for a game that I popped in the system once. Same with and as much as it's great to like not have to put on pants and suddenly like I'm just going and like pressing my little credit card password thing, and then suddenly it's like broop, 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 I'm coming into your like it just, I feel like they, in a way, they must know that your inability to trade actually probably sells more games for them in the end. Because instead
course.
of trading it in for credit towards another game, you got to buy that other game from scratch. So anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
but I may check it out.
Yeah, man. It's I gotta say, if you like just action games like the Devil May Cry series, Heavenly Sword, any action game series, Bayonetta has got. All right, I'll pull another game design principle out and throw it on this deck here. I like games that have a very that pay attention to the flow of combat very carefully. And there are some games that do a very good job of this. And so by flow of combat, I mean, how much time does the player spend attacking versus blocking versus moving versus changing weapons? You know, so thinking about all of that in ratios. So if a game has a really good flow, you'll pretty much be doing all of those in rapid succession, more or less evenly. And you'll always be accessing a different skill set, but in an order. You're not going to be constantly repeating the same skill set, typically. Right. You know, you're going to be going from one to the other. Games that do this really, really well are typically fighting games because they're designed to flow in that way. They're designed to move like a martial arts dance. One game example specifically that I'll use to illustrate this point, though, is from Bayonetta. Bayonetta does not have a block mechanic in it. She can only dodge.
Oh, okay.
So as a result, whenever an enemy attacks you, you dodge out of the way and time slows down, which then allows you to do attacks that do more damage back to the enemies. So you're always encouraged to be moving. Bayonetta can never sit still. And as a result, when you watch someone play Bayonetta who's at least moderately skilled at it, it's like watching somebody never get touched. It's watching somebody who's completely untouchable dance around massive, unbelievable enemies. And
that's cool.
And so from a visual standpoint and from a controller standpoint, your attack and combo chaining works so well in combination with not having to sit still that the game flow just feels right. And like,
how do you feel about the Arkham combat? Asylum and City.
Adore it. I adore it because it specifically challenges the player to attack enemies in different ways. And there are games that don't do this well. Assassin's Creed has crap combat because every enemy is more or less the same. You can attack every enemy with every weapon. They all just die. In Batman, if you attack the dude with the shield, normally you'll drop your combo immediately. The game punishes you so severely for not doing the right move against the right guy that it'll kill your combo. And that's everything in Arkham. So once you get it, once you get how free flow combat works, how your gadgets all work together, you're doing exactly what I said. Accessing a different skill set every couple of seconds. You're doing something different. You're trying to get that gadget combo up, so you have all the different variations. You get the variation bonus, and then when you're done, the end feels like the moment when the bat hits the ball and you know it's a home run. Like that's how the last hit of every combat should feel. Because then you're standing there with a bunch of bodies around you. And you're supposed to feel like a badass in that moment.
Yeah, I like the Arkham combat quite a bit too.
Yeah,
I don't play a whole lot of that kind of game, but you know the Arkham games have so many characters you already know that even if that's not your genre, like it still feels like a familiar universe you want to be in if you're into Batman. So
what is your genre? Let's take it in that direction.
I would say I'll put it this way.
Okay.
The games, like the genres that when I line up most of the games that are like in my favorites, there's a few genres that kind of emerge. But I think probably the most common one is some form of RPG. Now, to be clear, I would consider BioShock, Deus Ex, and for instance, BioShock and the Deus Ex series to be RPG infused like shooters. They have RPG elements. You customize, you level up. There's huge emphasis on story. You're making choices. It's not an RPG like, it's not a Dungeons and Dragons kind of RPG, but the customization there and the emphasis on story as opposed to a Call of Duty game where the single player campaign does not need a great story.
Yes.
I feel like, Deus Ex, certainly Half-Life, which I feel like Half-Life 2 is a bit more into this story than one, but Then you've got games like Thief, which like, but then again, Thief is its own genre too. It's like a stealth non-shooter where you technically can use bows and arrows and technically have a sword, but that's not the point. And then just your classic RPGs, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy IV, that kind of thing, or Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy I. The list goes on. But I would say most of the games that I really, really love have some kind of RPG elements, even if that's just story and customization of skills and leveling up as you go on.
Interesting. I'm going to be straight with you. I am the least proponent for story in video games.
Really?
And I love a good story in video games. So how do I live with myself? It works something like this. To me, story is good if you're trying to, like, if you're talking at, like, unless you're integrating it into the gameplay in an incredible way, you're really just talking at someone. Like, you're really not doing them any benefit by telling them a lot of story that they have to read in a video game.
Right.
Or they have to watch in a video game. So even though there's games that don't get me wrong, games that I adore and recognize for their killer good stories, I am like I care the least when it comes to story in a game. So when I define, when I define strictly in terms of gameplay merit. So for me, I see exactly what you mean when you say that a game like BioShock could be considered a role-playing game in the sense that you're making decisions, but to me those decisions are strictly like locked in a gameplay tight thing that you can't escape from in the kind of way that a game like Skyrim might let you escape from that locked box. BioShock doesn't necessarily let you escape from that locked box.
And I think that is I think what's the phrase I want to use? Part and parcel with the storytelling. Because whereas Skyrim, you can do the story, you can do the main, single player story stuff, but you can also do 500 hours of your own thing.
True.
But like by locking you in, that is one of the only ways I think that you can actually have a game. Like basically, I think linear gameplay is almost always part of a game with a good story. There's a difference between a good story and a good universe or a good world. But like really good storytelling, for better or worse, there are a lot of things you're just going to have to do in order.
Do you play any games that don't necessarily have a story to them, like a city builder or?
I played a lot of SimCity growing up. I still to this day, I don't go more than a month or two without playing a full 5-hour game of Civilization. And even though I say full, that's still quick mode, but you know what I mean? Sitting down and making that most of my day.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, so I don't certainly require story to be part of a game. And I see what you're saying about how at some point, if the game is fun and if what you're doing in the game is fun, then a good story is unnecessary, or at least not the point. Like the Mario games, there's almost never been a compelling narrative in any Mario game, and yet it's Mario.
Yeah.
So I see what you're saying there. To me, I feel like there are just certain moments where a game can tell a story in a unique way that could never be done. And sometimes the word better is scary to use because that's really subjective, but there are moments where there's a richer experience in storytelling because you have to fulfill the story rather than just let it wash over you.
I fully agree with you. That's one of the things that got me into game design in the first place, was the knowledge that, wait a minute, this is a medium that demands input. It demands something of me. And so suddenly I'm an intellectual part of this universe too. I can't just sit by and turn the page. I can't sit by and pause it, fast forward to the next chapter. I have to make an important decision. Like you said, do I put this man out of his misery? That's the question. It's not sit here or do you keep reading? It's do you kill this man?
Right.
Those are the kinds of experiences that role-playing games and that even video games in general, they can only ask you, do you proceed? Do you accept this next, whatever's down the next screen? Are you ready for it? If you're not, sit there. If you are, get moving, and I really, really latch onto that as why I am such a fan of games in the first place. So I brought up a little bit earlier the concept of favorite versus best. So we're gonna kind of I got like two more kind of points here in our video game talk. But what would you say is your favorite game versus what you think might be the best game, video game?
Oh, favorite is so hard.
Okay,
Um,
and I hate to put it on like a needle point and like, oh, just one, but give me, I'll say that I won't judge you if you just give me a favorite. I'm not gonna
I'll
be
say this:
I'm not gonna ask. I'm not
no
gonna.
game, no single game changed my life
Mhm.
the way that Final Fantasy IV, which was at the time
Four.
released as Final Fantasy II, did. I had played a little bit of Final Fantasy One.
Mm-hmm.
It was okay, but then I rented 2/4,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Americanization, and it just when I was now, to be fair, I was 10 years old, but it was the most compelling thing ever, and I finally understood the appeal of RPG battle mechanics, and I wanted to know what happened in the story, and it was like, oh, I just got to know that person, and now they're lost at sea. Oh no, and like it was compelling narrative. Now I would put that in the category of favorite because I go back and play it, and it was so amazing, and it's still a great game, but it was so rich and compelling and deep when I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Best, I would say, I feel like Civilization 5, particularly with the expansions, is one of the best balanced games I've ever played. That's, you know what I mean, in terms of like balance but variety.
Mm-hmm.
You really can play a new game every time. And you
Yeah.
play enough, you're going to get certain strategies, and that's going to draw certain people. It's kind of like chess. You eventually can draw people into certain actions and kind of have a limited number of options based on that. But I would say, while I don't have as big of a huge place in my heart that I do for Civ 5 as I do for Final Fantasy 4 because of my kid nostalgia,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's technically one of the best, if not the best game I've continued to play.
Those are great answers, man. I gotta say,
Thanks.
I give it to you for Civ 5, especially because, and you know what? As soon as you said Civ 5, my brain went, decent answer, although it is very board gamey. But then my brain immediately went, no, you can't really recreate the Civilization experience as a board game. It's just too
They've tried,
Civ. Like, I know, yeah, and it wasn't quite as big
and
of a
it's
hit.
never good.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think about it like, yeah, Civilization in terms of just pure game, it has to be one of the pinnacles of gameplay in existence. It's so hard to recreate that experience. Many have tried. There's a lot of Civ-like games out there, but
Sure.
and I've got Beyond Earth, I've got 5. I'm a fan. I'm not great, but I'm a fan. So if you want to throw down sometime, we definitely should play around.
I've never played multiplayer, but I've
Dog.
wanted to try.
Dog, let's play her.
Yeah?
Let's give it a shot because you can
All
always
right.
just like save and quit at any time, come back to it months, weeks later. We'll give it a shot soon. I
Okay, cool.
digress. Civ 5 is a good answer on best on favorite. 4, I've not played enough for it to get. It didn't have the same moment you had. So when you didn't have that moment, I think it's kind of lost on you when you play it a little bit later. But the moment I had with the Final Fantasy series, just to kind of tie into your favorite a little bit, was with 6.
Hmm.
6 hit me like a bullet. I played it I played it a completely legal ROM copy that I had to back up my cart copy, of course, during high school, and I fell in love. I was like, who are all these characters? This game is so long. Like,
Yeah.
what is the game over? The world's ended. Oh, wait, okay, I'm back. Everybody's dead. Oh, wait, she just tried to kill herself. Oh my god. It broke my little mind, and it showed me what like JRPGs with 16 bits could do with music and storytelling and character writing. And
Yeah.
it was like, okay, Final Fantasy, easily a favorite. And then I went on to play 7, 8, and a bunch of the other ones, but nothing hit me like 6. Like 6 was the one that sparked me for that series and JRPGs
Yeah.
in general. Favorite game we already talked about. It's Bayonetta. She's, oh, what a lady. She is my pinnacle of a lot of things. Like action. The designer of Bayonetta, Hideaki, what was his last name? Oh my god, I can't believe it. Kamiya, that's his name. Hideaki Kamiya. He was the director of Resident Evil 2, and went on to direct a bunch of other stuff like Beautiful Joe and Bayonetta, right? So this guy knows like cool beyond cool, and he put it all into this game. When I played it, I had never smiled so hard playing a video game than when I've played Bayonetta for the first time. I had the music just pumping. And I'll admit, when I played Bayonetta 2 for the first time on the Wii U, I may have teared up a little bit at the beginning of it because it is a fantastic game as well. And my immediate thought was like, she's back. Like everything's perfect again. Like I'm back. There's more of everything that I love.
I'm glad you had that experience because I lived through a couple of PC sequels in a row that just made me never get excited about a sequel again. Basically, Deus Ex Invisible War, Thief Deadly Shadows, and I was not as in love with Half-Life 2 as the rest of the world. I thought it was perfectly fine, but it didn't have, for me, the novelty of 1. I know that's blasphemy to some people. It was great, but like it was not as. I mean, that's the problem with sequels in general, right? But so those 3 things when I in a row came out and made me start going like, geez, maybe I should like stop getting excited about things, and that's kind of been my MO for a lot of things, like a remake of a movie that I love, a reboot of a series that I love. Oh, they're coming back out with new Twin Peaks. Oh, the new season of Beavis and Butthead. I always go, I'll believe it when I see it. Next, like I just don't get excited.
And then Finch just left. Left the new Twin Peaks thing.
Oh, that's what I heard. Honestly, I mean that was an example where I was like taking that one on, but I personally am not. I tried to do Twin Peaks on Netflix, but it just seems like the kind of commitment. I'll put it this way. I can imagine I'm currently single. I can imagine a great woman in my life who we just, for whatever reason, together, committing both to each other and Twin Peaks, maybe could get through it. But like, whew, I just worry that by the end it would be kind of like Lost, where it's like, is it as satisfying as you hope, or like Serial? This is a very different thing with the Serial podcast, which like we all were trained to expect satisfaction. Anyway, now I'm really getting off topic, but the point is, I'm glad you had that experience with Bayonetta 2, because so often sequels, it's like, there's that moment where you're like, oh, this is,
and it wasn't directed by the same guy as Bayonetta 1, so I was worried, and but it ended up paying off. So the best game, I think, is Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Oh, wow. Okay. Good choice.
Have you played it?
I'm not going to lie, I haven't. I've watched it being played, but I've never personally played it.
Okay.
That was PlayStation, right?
That was PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and you could get it on the 360 and the PS3. You could download it for the PSN on the PS3, and you can get it for the 360 these days. Those are the only places that it exists. I don't think there's a good PC port for it yet.
Yeah.
But I played it on the Xbox 360. I played the port of it for the first time when I was in college, and I realized, like, wow, this is one of the best games I've ever played. And I had played other Castlevania games leading up to it, Super Castlevania 4, 3, 2, all the way back. And I had played the 3D ones too, some of the PS2 ones. So I'd seen all directions the Castlevania series had gone. I'd played a lot of the Game Boy Advance ones, Aria of Sorrow, and all that. But I had never played the sort of beginning of the Metroidvania series. And the beginning was Super Metroid, sure, but Castlevania Symphony of the Night sort of just drove the nail home for me. And I played Super Metroid too, and that's got a lot of the explory stuff, but Symphony of the Night has the music. The music is some of the best I've ever heard in any video game. It had the setting. It had a whole second game when you beat what you think,
the upside down thing or whatever, right? Yeah.
And it's so great.
I've been looking for. I mean, one thing that's become strangely, unexpectedly difficult about the Brentalfloss thing now entering its seventh year with lyrics videos, something like that, is that ever since 2010, I've done a Halloween video, at least one Halloween video a year. And there's only so many spooky games that really lend themselves to my style of writing. But I really enjoyed Castlevania 2 with lyrics. And I also really had a hard time finding one to go with this last year. So I almost wonder if, I mean, what is Symphony of the Night? Like 20, 30-hour game? Less?
I would say it's about a 20-hour game, yeah.
So like if I maybe occasionally cheated with a walkthrough or something, I could get through it in a couple days. Maybe that could be a good lyric, because I think Castlevania is one of those series that like it's really accessible because everybody knows Dracula.
Yes.
Even if you don't know this Dracula, everyone has a sense of Transylvania, you know, like and all that stuff. And isn't Symphony of the Night, is that the one with like the hokey voiceover?
Yes. What is man?
Yeah,
Nothing more than a miserable pile of secrets. But enough talk.
It could be fun. Oh, you have played that game.
How about you?
You are well versed.
Oh, it's great. It's like, oh, well, I forgot what Richter says. And the beginning of that game is the end of the previous game. So you start off by playing as Richter Belmont, and then it just stops, and you start playing as Alucard. You know, it's masterful storytelling for the Castlevania series. The piece of trivia, I read an interview with the director, and he said, I took over the Castlevania series, and I wanted to do something completely different, but I was worried that people would get upset with me if I did something different with Castlevania. So I put the letter X at the end of the game, so I could do whatever I wanted. And that's why it changed from like a linear game to a complete sprawling map game, because he wanted to do that, but he didn't want to call it like Castlevania 5 because people would be really upset. So it became Castlevania X. So now I can do what I want.
Right.
But yeah.
It almost makes it like, I mean, whatever you can do to sort of make your game a fanfic of, you know what I mean, in a way, right? Like I sometimes think of Mega Man X as kind of a fanfic of the original series. And even though it's a very successful offshoot, it's still kind of a what if, you know, kind of concept.
It doesn't really feel like it's part of the same place. You know, it's not in the same way where like the Battle Network series is clearly completely different than the canon of Mega Man. This X is supposed to be clearly after the events of Mega Man. Sure. But it just doesn't feel like it's the same place or time, or, you know, it's not the same place and time, obviously, but you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about.
By the way, this might be a good time, now that we've talked so much about game design, for me to say something I haven't said publicly, which is I'm slowly but surely working on a game. I have not announced. You know, we're still only like 75% sure we're going to go with the title that we're going to use. The team currently, I say we, there's two people on it, and I'm one of them.
That's a we.
That's true, and might be on. We'll see. But be on the Wii. But the Wii, probably the Wii U.
Probably the Wii. Better market. Better later.
Later. But I don't want to spill too many beans. I can just say that it's a console-based party game that I've been wanting to create some version of it for a long time. All my years of playing fun board games, even like DVD-based games, and it's like I've recently just gone, oh, I know how to make this now. So probably more information will be coming out about this from my channel and my social media stuff in the next few weeks, or certainly months. But it is an interesting topic. We're talking about game design and stuff, and like how to apply some of these things. Not all of them can be applied to a party game, but
that's true.
You know, when it works, when something works, it works.
Yeah, man. Well, if you ever have any game design questions or you want to bounce anything off me, feel free to hit me up anytime, of course. And if we have you back on the Ludocast interview, or if we have you on the Ludocast panel show at any point in time and you've got an update for us, feel free to share it. So we'll be sure to get the word out and be sure to spread it as much as I'll help as much as I can.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. I've had a little bit of experience working with board games, card games, digital games before, and that sort of thing. So anywhere that I can apply my trade, I usually try. And so Yeah, if you ever need any help, hit me up. So I have one.
Awesome.
I have one last question for you. We'll round things out here. This is a nice, deep, profound game design question, especially since you just dropped that you're going to be making your own game. So we talked about the types of principles that you would like to have in a game that you make. Do you trust yourself to replicate those principles in a game that you make, or do you feel that there's places that you want to grow or study something first? Do you feel like you're at a point in your life where you can do that, or are you just starting to go down that road?
Here's what I know. I know that I am good at reading a room, and that's a real life skill that requires an intuitive knowledge of people in the room with you. But I feel like I'm pretty decent, not every minute of every day, pretty decent at knowing what's working. I mean, like, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't so much trust myself to have the perfect idea from the get-go. I don't trust my gut to always lead to the best execution or iteration of a game element or a mechanic or whatever. But I feel like what I can trust is my ability to synthesize what people say through playtesting, asking them questions, seeing what they think, bouncing it off people that I know that are smart, or that maybe I'm a little bit more of a dreamer and they're a little more practical. They'll, pull me down to the ground a little bit and go, okay, but don't forget blah, 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 that kind of thing. I feel like what I'm able to trust in with myself as a potential designer is my ability to, take the data of how people are treating a prototype, how people are playtesting, how people respond to new concepts that I throw at them as possibilities, and synthesize all that into something better using that feedback. That I feel like I can trust.
Good answer, man. Great answer. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, folks, if you're listening to the show for the first time, and this is your first time listening to the Ludocast interview, I hope you enjoyed this conversation between me and my friend Brent Black, also known as Brentalfloss.
That's me.
And so go Google that, folks. Go take a look at his YouTube stuff. Listen to some of the great video games with lyrics videos that he's put out. If you've Brent's got a website, and I'm sure on that site you got some dates, maybe. Upcoming appearances?
I do. I have 2 shows in Philly and 1 show in the UK, actually. So, yeah, Brentalfloss.com has all that information, easily accessible from the front page.
Excellent.
So go check it out.
Excellent. Thank you. And so thanks again, Brent, for spending a little bit of time talking with me. We'll get this show up this weekend. Spread it around, and I look forward to the next time we get to talk, man.
Me too, dude. Thanks so much for having me.
All right.
Fun.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye.